Senator will be in order.
Mr. President, I have a motion at the desk.
Senator, clerk will report.
The senator from Kansas, Mr. Marshall, moves to commit the bill H.R. 2872 to the Committee on Appropriations of the Senate with instructions to report the same back to the Senate in one day, not counting any day on which the Senate is not in session, with changes that provide continuing appropriations for the entire federal government through the end of fiscal year 2024.
Mr. President,
Senator from Kansas.
I rise in support of my motion to commit this continuing resolution to the Appropriations Committee with instructions for them to return to the floor a new continuing resolution to fund the government through the 2024 fiscal year. The requested modifications to this continuing resolution are nothing more than date changes and minor anomalies that the Appropriations Committee is more than equipped to handle with a 24-hour turnaround time. Doing so gives us ample time for the Senate and House to pass this amended legislation and send it to the President's desk before Friday's funding deadline. Under the bipartisan agreements made as part of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, a full-year CR through September 30th would result in a spending cut.
Senator, excuse me. We need to have more order, please. We're going to take your conversations off the floor. Senator from Kansas.
Under the bipartisan agreements made as the part of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, a full-year CR through September 30th would result in a spending cut of $73 billion, bringing our total discretionary spending down to $1.56 trillion, a significant cut from the $1.66 trillion funding deal that's in the works currently. This is the fiscally responsible decision that the American people deserve, and Congress has an obligation to make. We should agree to this spending cut, roll up our sleeves, and get back to work on an even more responsible funding package for the next fiscal year that will start to address our nation's massive $34 trillion debt. Thank you. I yield back.
Senator from Washington.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to the motion to commit the CR with instructions. The Senate has before it a bipartisan, bicameral CR which keeps the government open and gives us time to negotiate and pass full-year funding bills under the Schumer-Johnson top-line agreement. The junior senator from Kansas wants us to walk away from the bipartisan compromise on the CR, guarantee a government shutdown, and accept a devastating year-long CR rather than do our jobs as senators and write full-year bills. I spoke at length recently about how a full-year CR would lock us into last year's spending plans and policies as if nothing has changed in over a year. And it would force devastating across-the-board cuts to programs that our country and families rely on, defense and non-defense alike. It is simply not an option. We need to pass this CR, keep working 24/7 to hammer out the strongest possible funding bills, and for all those reasons, I strongly oppose the motion and urge my colleagues to vote no.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I too urge our colleagues to reject this motion that calls for the Appropriations Committee to put forward a year-long continuing resolution for fiscal year 2024. Adopting this motion would wipe out the work of the Appropriations Committee that led to 12 standalone bills being reported last summer with overwhelming bipartisan support. It would also lock in dangerously inadequate funding levels for our national security and lead to cuts in other vital programs serving our veterans, older Americans, low-income families. It would stall biomedical research, harm our farmers, and slow progress that we are making on our infrastructure. A year-long CR would result in defense funding levels that are nearly $27 billion less than the President's request and the Fiscal Responsibility Act. According to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, under a year-long CR, quote, thousands of defense programs will be impacted, with the most devastating impacts being to personnel, the nuclear triad modernization, shipbuilding and maintenance, munitions production and replenishments, and the U.S. Indo-PACOM priorities. Mr. President, a year-long CR would result in our military being less ready to respond to the serious security threats around the globe. I urge my colleagues to reject this motion and support the reasonable approach of completing our work.
Senator from Kansas.
I'm reminded of two dates. A date in June when the Appropriations Committee did their job. They got all their appropriations bills done. And another date in November when we last worked on this floor through a minibus. We asked for more time. We stand at the ready. We're begging to bring these bills to the floor. Let them see the light of day. Let us finish our job. But in the meantime, I believe that this CR is the best path for American citizens. Thank you. I yield back.
Question is on the motion. Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin.